Hi, folks. If you are a subscriber to my YouTube channel, you know that I've been begging the universe to send us a young, progressive, dedicated activist to take on Erik Dilan. You might remember I got a lot of traffic to my opposition research Erik Dilan video. So I'm honored now to bring on to the YouTube channel an upcoming article I'll be doing for the independent newspaper, Mr. Christian Celeste Tate. Christian, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Sander.
I know that you have a hyphenated last name, but I want to tell my listeners that you also sometimes go by your own little AOC moniker. You can also go by CCT, which I think is cool.
Fun fact, it's actually not a hyphenated last name. My parents made it as confusing for voters as they possibly could. And so it's four separate unhyphenated names here.
Oh, okay. Okay, right. That's right. There's no hyphen there. Okay, no problem. Well, what's the story there? Was there a Celeste in your family history as well as a Tate?
Yeah, so Tate is my dad's surname and Celeste is my mom's. And then Stewart is the one, won't be on the ballot, but is the fourth name tucked in there, which is just a middle name, family name from my dad's side.
That's great. So my first question for you today is, tell us about a formative political experience, maybe even when you were 6 or 7, but what was the experience that really kind of shaped you and made you who you are?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a funny question because I think that so much of our experiences are political, right? The political experiences we have are not just like who you show up to vote for. It's the dynamics of this world that shape you. And so I think about the way that I grew up. You know, I grew up navigating a lot of wealth inequality. My parents sacrificed a lot to send my sister and I to private schools, give us every opportunity that they could see for us. And I'm grateful for what the doors that has opened for me, and also the experience of navigating, you know, the commute from the working class community I grew up in to the extremely wealthy white private school I attended. It really showed me how wealth can predetermine life experience, and in fact, it almost always does.
Right. And now it's funny, zooming up to the present moment, tell us a little bit about your current job. I know that you are actually kind of a philanthropic activist and you're trying to channel capital into anti-poverty work. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so my day job is sort of social impact consulting, if you can parse that apart. It really just means I work with nonprofits and philanthropists to spend money aimed at alleviating poverty. But you know, I'll name that while that work is interesting, it is effectively charity work, right? It's about reallocating the wealth that some in our society have spent lifetimes accumulating. And I appreciate what I learned from that work, and I've learned a lot from it. But part of why I am here, part of why I organize with so much of my time and energy and headspace outside of that work is because I don't think that work will solve our problems, right? What we
Right.
need to do is eliminate the ability of some in our society to spend lifetimes hoarding. We need to spend less energy reallocating at their whims and more energy creating the structural fairness that working people need.
Right, right. I'm reminded of the words of Zach De La Rocha from Rage Against the Machine. He said, "Fuck the G rides. I want the machines that are making them." So it's
There you
kind of
go.
like, yeah, real capital is not discretionary income or charitable donations. It's
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
owning a factory or creating a cooperative business or, yeah. So just connecting
And
with you about that. Yeah, go ahead.
and I want to be clear that that's no shade at the folks out there spending their money on charity, right? Like that's
Yeah.
a lot of people's lives are better because of the work that money goes towards.
Absolutely. And it's a
It's,
beautiful thing to be generous and to be charitable, and we're
mhm.
grateful for all the philanthropy
And at
philanthropy
the
out
same
there.
time, a fair world will be built in a much more structural
Exactly. And we're going to give ourselves the freedom today to talk about power, and that's what we're going for
way.
here. We're out to slay the dragons. We're out to we're out
Definitely.
to you're taking on somebody I'm not even sure you understand. My wife Sophie thinks that this is going to be easy for you, and I don't think it's going to be so easy for you. I
Yeah.
think Erik Dilan has got roots in the community. I failed to even get elected to the county committee out here. And I served 2 terms on the Brooklyn County Committee in Sunset Park. But here in East New York, I got slaughtered. And I, at one point, threw some shade about Erik Dilan, and I was talking to the wrong people because they reacted like, oh my God, we got a progressive in East New York. So let's talk about Erik Dilan. Have you ever run into some of his fans? I know he's got a lot of critics, but what about his fans?
Um, so first I want to agree with you that this is not going to be easy. Like I don't want anybody listening or watching or reading this to think for a second that this is a slide downhill. I think that it's easy to fall into that trap because of how well Zohran did in this district. Zohran won the primary with 65%, I think, and then the general with 71, give or take. And those are big numbers, right? But the nature of an assembly campaign and a mayoral campaign are quite different. The nature of Zohran's race against like obviously a formidable political entrenched candidate, but like not an incumbent is quite different. And so I want to be clear to anybody who is paying attention that we need to work. And there's a lot of work to do and a lot of communicating to do with voters about why what we're offering is more beautiful, is more freeing, is more powerful, and more collective. So it's a lot of work and I'm excited to do it. To your question though, I I would say I've met sympathizers more so than fans, right? Like I have met folks who have been helped by the Dilan family. I've met folks that have respect and appreciation for their commitment to public service. And I'm not here to question or challenge or undermine that, right? But I think the folks I meet the most are folks who can't find him and who've been looking for him.
Yeah, where is he?
And those are the folks that are excited to see a hungry, young Democratic Socialist ready to do the work to bring real representation to a community that deserves it.
Right. Now, would you always say Democratic Socialist or would you say progressive to some audiences? Because out here in East New York, it's like the district is almost like the tale of two neighborhoods. In Bushwick, I think we lead off with the DSA moniker more. If I was a campaign worker for you, I would say in Highland Park, maybe we lead off with progressive more. Do you agree?
Mm, no, I actually don't. I actually don't agree. I think I don't have any interest in like skirting around with folks, right? I think that folks, and I think this is something that Zohran did show us in a really compelling way, is that I think people want to be spoken to like adults and they want to be told what you stand for. I don't think they are interested in the classic politicking of hiding and obfuscating, right? And I don't think that democratic socialism is something that should be run from. Like, I'm a democratic socialist because I believe that everybody in our society should have their needs met. I don't think anybody in this city, let alone this district, should go week to week wondering if they can stay in their house for another month. And those are the values that led me to democratic socialism. And those are the reasons why I'm excited to talk to folks about not just not just my policies and my platform, but about how I got here myself. And I think that folks will resonate with that as they did with Zohran. And I think that's true on both sides of the community, not just Bushwick, but East New York as well.
You're right. Thank you for calling me out on that. After 8 years in the DSA, you would think I wouldn't have so much socialist phobia, but I'm a child of the '80s, and there was so much anti-communist propaganda in the '80s. So,
Well,
anyway,
I want to be clear though that I see what you're saying, right? Like I'm not saying that I'm not trying to gaslight you, right? Like these are real dynamics. And I think part of our assignment is to reintroduce people to democratic socialism because
yeah,
there's an enormous amount of money and energy and political strategy has gone into alienating people from democratic socialism. And so we don't have the luxury of a first impression. Instead, we have to meet everybody where they're at. And folks who are skeptical, we have to be understanding of that. And we have to reintroduce them to show them what I see as being beautiful about this ideology and this future. And I think folks will see that.
tell us more about your involvement in the Zohran Mamdani campaign. I know you were a field lead out here in East New York. Tell us about that. What did you hear? What did you see?
Yeah, so during the primary, I was primarily working with WFP and DSA to like bring cohorts of WFP volunteers to DSA canvases. And that was mostly in Alexa Avilas's district, canvassing for both Alexa and Zohran. And then in the general election, I became the East Brooklyn coordinator, which really just means I was like coordinating the field leads, the volunteer field leads across East New York, Cypress Hills, Brownsville, and Canarsie.
Great. Yeah, Alexa is also an old friend, and I was involved in her campaign too. So,
Yeah.
um,
And it was I think it was a really beautiful experience because I think what we saw, I think like a couple stages to it, right? Like the role that I took on was not a standalone role during the primary. There wasn't a standalone East Brooklyn coordinator because the campaign wasn't yet investing so intensively in reaching voters out there. And it was because of the volunteer field leads that were coming out to canvases and asking questions and demanding that the campaign come and work in their communities that the campaign responded and stepped up to meet those requests. And so it was like, I think even just that level of responsiveness is a really beautiful mechanism you don't often see in political campaigns. And then even when we started implementing that responsiveness, we saw like a really encouraging and exciting growth in the amount of excitement that folks had to come out and canvass. And when we started for the general, I think we were doing maybe a canvas a week in each of those four neighborhoods. And by the end, we had by the end we could staff all day shifts in all four of those neighborhoods for Get Out the Vote. Like that's a remarkable growth. And the only thing that has changed to create that growth is just a campaign's willingness to show up. Like it's all just about choices to show up,
yeah,
and that makes all the difference.
yeah, the numbers were impressive. I think we had like 167 people on the WhatsApp group at the end of the campaign, and the love we were getting from the
Mhm.
Bangladeshis was just outrageous. People were like, "I'm going to this Bangladeshi restaurant. I never heard of it before. It's out in the
All
eastern
over the
part of
place.
East New York." Yeah, and like whenever you canvassed a Bangladeshi household, it was like, oh, 100%. Like, all six of us are here. All six of us have voted or are voting for Mamdani. It was beautiful. It was like,
Yeah, I mean the communities you're referencing in City Line were just incredible growth in voter turnout
yeah,
from prior elections.
yeah,
Like really inspiring growth in turnout. And I think part of our challenge is like really re-engaging with folks, who saw something in Zohran that they might not automatically see in another candidate. And again, finding the points of our vision that are feeling most powerful to folks, most beautiful, most liberatory, and really having conversations about those.
let's talk more about the district. Let's talk about Spanish. A lot of people in DSA were like, I don't know about CCT because I don't know if we need a native Spanish speaker in the district. And I was like, oh my God, he doesn't speak any Spanish. But then at lunch, I was impressed actually that you have some
Oh,
okay
thank you.
Spanish, right? So
Okay, I'll take it. Yes.
how is your Spanish?
My Spanish is all right. My Spanish is all right. It's I studied Spanish when I was young, but most of the Spanish that I have comes from organizing here.
Right,
I'm chapter chair, North Brooklyn chapter chair of New York Communities for Change. That's, it's a heavily Spanish community, heavily Spanish speaking community. And like a lot of the Spanish that I have here is practiced by organizing with those folks and being out at the doors knocking.
right. And by the
Um,
way, we should tell anybody listening that we are in a district 80-54, and it's 50% Latinx, Latino, Latin, Latina. And there's a high percentage of people that don't speak English at home too. So,
Yeah, I think it's about last I saw, I think it was less than half of folks speak Spanish only, right? I think it was between 30 and 40 folks said they spoke Spanish at home. But 50% Latina, 25% Black, and then 10% white, 10% South Asian, roughly.
right, right.
So yeah, like I think it is obviously important from both a language and just a lived experience point of view. It is important that folks can see themselves in their elected officials to the extent that they can feel authentically seen by their elected officials.
Hmm.
And I think that one thing that I have found in the organizing that I have done in this community is that I have not found identity to be a barrier in my ability to connect with my neighbors and my peers. I felt receptive to those concerns because it's important. But those are not foreign to me, those concerns, because I've been doing the work here, right? And I've been building connections across lines of difference. Whether it is New York Communities for Change or the community board on either side of the district or the East New York Community Land Trust, like these are Black and brown spaces. And I think what is really compelling to me is the way that Black and brown communities like ours, I think, really understand the ways in which we share more than we differ. Like the power structures that we are up against, the things that threaten your access to housing security, the things that threaten your sense of safety, those are shared across these lines of difference. I think much like a lot of energy has also gone into like racializing those differences, right? And trying to pit Black communities against Black brown communities and immigrant communities against Native New Yorker communities. And I think part of what folks are hungry for is a politics that acknowledges that sense of shared challenge and shared struggle.
And talking about your background in the district, tell us about your work with community boards 4 and 5.
Yeah. So I'm first vice chair of Community Board 4. I joined Community Board 4 as soon as I got to Bushwick. And honestly, like just was really, really compelled by that space. Like I moved to Bushwick. I came to New York in 2018. And like so many New Yorkers, like I was pushed, I was sort of priced from one apartment to the next, right? So I moved all over the place. Finally landed in Bushwick, and by the time I did, I was desperate to feel a sense of place in the neighborhood that I lived. And so I wanted to put down roots. I wanted to know my neighbors. I wanted to feel like I belonged in that place. And I wanted to stay almost no matter where it was. And I'm very grateful that it was Bushwick. And the community board was one of the ways that I did that. And I just felt immediately like drawn to the love that these folks have for their community. Like these are like most community boards, it skews older resident, it skews toward homeowners, toward car owners. Um, and so, there are folks that don't that aren't in the same life stage as me necessarily. They don't necessarily have the same lived experiences, but what we share is a love for this community. And I'm like deeply inspired by the way that those folks show up for it. And so I started going to Community Board 5 meetings on the East New York side, in part just because I wanted to see what was similar and what was different, and in part because I was hyper aware of the like inter-district nature of the things we were fighting against. Like the Housing and Land Use is the committee I've been on the longest when CB4. And it goes without saying, like the development that is coming to Broadway Junction doesn't care if you're in CB4 or CB5. It's going to have an impact on how you live your life. And so I wanted to try and create more points of overlap between the two. And I found the same love, like deep, deep love of community on the East New York side that I was so inspired by on the Bushwick side.
Well, speaking of Broadway Junction, what's your take on de Blasio's East New York rezoning plan, the Atlantic Avenue corridor east of Pennsylvania Avenue? We had rezoning and now we're seeing 10-story buildings popping up. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is very similar to the conversations around Broadway Junction, in that it is no longer a question of whether or not it should happen, right? It's not a question of like whether or not I like the rezoning or I don't like the rezoning. It's a
Right.
question of like, how can we almost just mitigate the negative effects of it, right? Like there are a lot of positive outcomes of investing in communities, right? Like the Broadway Junction investments are in ADA accessibility, right? Like you're not gonna find me out here arguing against ADA compliance. But we have to acknowledge and be hyper aware of the impacts that has on the markets around it and the private investment that will be catalyzed by that public investment.
Yeah.
And so again, it's not a question of like if, it's a question of how. And so my feelings about it are frustration because I don't think that we do enough right now to mitigate the negative consequences on the downside of this new development, right? Like even affordable housing that is built in this community is not affordable to the people who live in this community. And we have a lot of organizing. We're lucky to have a lot of really compelling organizing that is done to try and keep people in their homes and think creatively about what mechanisms might make sense here. Um, and so I think that there are ways for us to be creative, but we haven't yet demonstrated a political willingness for creativity.
Tell us more about where you're from originally. You're originally from the DC suburbs, is that right?
Yep. Yep. Born and raised in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I don't suppose many viewers will know where that is, but born and raised in Gaithersburg, moved to Silver Spring, Maryland when I was in high school. Just like two different DC suburbs on the Maryland side.
So
And then
I know what that's like being from Falls Church. So you got politics in the blood, right?
Yeah, Beltway. Thankfully, yeah, a little Beltway politics for you.
And then you
Yeah,
went
but
to college in Maine. Tell us about that.
yeah, went to Bowdoin College in Brunswick. Um, Yeah, and I'm grateful for the experience. It much like the wealthy private schools that I referenced in my younger days, like it opened doors for me, and that's a privilege that I'm grateful for. And it was really hard to be there. It was a complicated place, and I struggled to find myself, let alone my place there. I think because it was very I felt very aware while I was there of like the things that made me stand out or felt like I stand out, right? I had different experiences with wealth and ethnicity than most of the folks around me. Um, so it was a complicated place, but I'm grateful for it. It occupies I think gratefully back to it, and I left with a strong community from it that I'm grateful for.
And they also produced the current mayor-elect. And you were saying at lunch
We did
recently that they
a far more famous alum.
and they didn't really capitalize on that very much. They didn't use that as a donor
Nah.
outreach opportunity for.
You know,
Don't you want to donate to Bowdoin now that produced Zohran? We produced this
it
brilliant.
depends what donors you want, Sandra. It
We
depends what
promote. We,
donors you
we
want.
yeah. We produced this amazing African American Studies major that is now a rising star. Speaking of rising stars, this might be out there, and we might edit this out if you don't want to include this. But do you have a take on this recent controversy? Sometimes people in DSA are contacting me and saying, "What's your take on the Chi Osei?
Mm.
Should he run against Hakeem or not? Is that do you have a gut feeling? Do you have an intuition?
Wow, I would be a fool to give you a gut feeling 2014.
What's your prediction?"
You won't get one here, Sandra. I'm excited for the forum. I unfortunately I won't be able to join on Wednesday. I had to skip the last CB4 meeting for my own endorsement forum, and so I need to go be present in my community.
Right.
I'm disappointed that I won't be able to go, but I'm very excited for updates. I think it'll be
Well, here's an easier question. What are you hearing? Because I'm hearing, I don't know, like I hate to say ChatGPT, but if you look at the internet, if you aggregate all of the probabilities of the internet and you use the computer, you ask the computer what it thinks. It says, "Cheese, great guy, great energy, great background, but great progressive politics, but he has a 5 to 10% chance of beating the machine with Hakeem." But then other people in DSA say, well, if you look at Jabari's numbers, Jabari Brisport's numbers, if Chi can get 75% of all of the Zohran voters that voted for Jabari, and then 30% of the other voters, then he could win.
Yeah. I mean, look, you've gone deeper into ChatGPT than I have on this topic. But
I'm in a huge
I,
rabbit hole on this one. Yeah, I know. And this is not really relevant to your race, so let me back up
well,
out of the rabbit
what
hole.
I will say is that I really like Chi. I really like Chi as a person. I was sort of like activated as a community organizer in New York's BLM movement. And through Warriors in the Garden, like, Chi was a very prominent part of that movement, at least from my experience of that movement. And so there are ways in which I feel activated as an organizer or inspired as an organizer by Chi. So like whether or not Chi will be endorsed as a DSA candidate is like a whole other thing. But I am But I do have a lot of respect and appreciation for Chi, and I think that she will run a compelling, exciting, and attention-worthy campaign as Chi has done multiple times before.
Yeah, that would be incredible for a 27-year-old to beat Hakeem Jeffries. And you know
Yeah.
what? I've seen miracles happen inside DSA before. No one thought AOC would win. Somebody said basically F ChatGPT, because if you ask ChatGPT what were Zoran's chances a year ago, they would say, well, probably 0% because he's zero in the polls.
Yeah.
And what happened? What happened was we offered something of substance. We
Yeah.
offered affordability and economics and bread and butter issues. So
Yeah. And the whole thing that we're doing everywhere is building something better, right? And ChatGPT is going to tell you what happened based on the trash thing we built last time, but it's
yeah,
categorically different, right?
yeah, yeah. Great. So I know a couple of years ago you were thinking about running up against Dilan for this position a couple of years ago. What inspired you this time around?
Yeah, so I first started having conversations with folks about potentially running for office before the 2024 cycle. And it was part of this. I mentioned being sort of like activated as an organizer in the BLM movement. I was sort of, like so many New Yorkers, I spent multiple years outside every day, living into my values and loving every minute of it. And after a couple years, energy started to kind of dissipate as COVID, folks returned to a greater sense of normalcy after COVID and went back to work and started getting busy. And I still felt that energy inside of me. And so I started looking for permanent places to put that energy. And I started asking myself the question of like, what do I have to offer this movement and where can I offer it most impactfully? And so it was talking through those questions with folks, both folks in the community and other organizers, other folks in the movement, that made me start to think about running for office. And at the time, I lived in the 53rd district, Mirza Davilas district. And so a couple organizers that I had been in conversation with asked me to consider moving to the 54th, and putting that energy to work against Alon. So ultimately, we decided it wasn't the right time, wasn't the right moment, wasn't the right fit for the 2024 cycle. But as I've been continuing and renewing and expanding those conversations this time around, it just has felt more right.
So give us your top three issues. How are you going to win this race?
Yeah, so the top three issues that I want to talk to every voter about are keeping New Yorkers in their homes, first and foremost. I think fighting back against displacement pressure is something that every single person in this community is struggling with. Protecting our neighbors against ICE. I think you cannot possibly run a worthwhile campaign right now and not talk about the effects of fascism on our communities and the importance of standing up for one another. And investing in community safety is the third thing that I think is top of mind for folks, especially on the East New York side of this community, but really throughout.
And when you say that, you don't mean more police. Like you're not trying to
I
aid
appreciate that
Cuomo.
clarifying question, Sanders. Yeah, when I talk about community safety, I am talking about investing in communities in the ways that we know reduce crime in the first place. I'm talking about after school and summer youth programming. I'm talking about access to mental health supports. I'm talking about access to substance abuse treatment and homelessness counseling or supports, rather like these are the investments that we know help to reduce harm. Because the safest communities are the ones in which everybody has enough to eat. But if we only approach safety by enforcement, then we're never going to reduce crime. We're never going to reduce harm. And there are really inspiring examples of community-based interventions in this community, um, that I think it is the job of an elected official, of an assembly member, to elevate and support and to use both the resourcing of the office and sort of the bully pulpit to try and expand those really incredible community-led solutions.
There were some black political action groups who deliberately targeted Zohran. I saw this on the New Kings
Mm.
Democrats WhatsApp
Mhm.
group saying, and
Yeah.
they said some stuff about DSA, and I was like, is that really true? And actually, it was. They said DSA wants the abolition of all police. And I was like, that's a hyperbolic exaggeration, but it actually is kind of true if you read the DSA
Mhm.
policy a certain way, that over time we're looking towards, the eventual abolition of the carceral state and reducing police. So it creates a vulnerability for an African American progressive Democratic Socialist running in a very racially and politically diverse district
Mhm.
that, a conservative black political action group could say, you as a DSA member are actually,
Mhm.
you are representing defund the police. And
Mhm.
how would you respond?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm sure you're right, right? I'm sure the packs will come. And I think that what I have found really interesting is in all of the community work that I have done here, like this is one of those areas where we agree a lot more than we disagree. I don't think you'll find anybody in this community on either side of the aisle that thinks that we don't need more and better summer programming for kids, or doesn't believe that kids would have an easier time staying out of it if they had productive, positive energy like spaces to engage, right? Um, and so I would respond to that by saying that I am focused on the areas where I see a lot of commonality in the community, and that is in areas of community investment. I think one of the traps that we fell into during the like defund movement was that we framed our demands in a deconstructive way as opposed to a constructive way. The defund movement was never just about spending less on police. It was always about spending more on and community investment, right? On these like tools of community safety. But because the mantra was sort of was super concise, right? It's hard to fit all of that into a tagline, and it left folks with the feeling that we were deconstructing as opposed to constructing. And so what I'm trying to do is paint a picture that is really focused on what is constructive and what we agree on, because I think that we agree about what needs to be constructed here. And to me, that's step one.
I think you got a future in this business.
Interview business.
No, that's good. That's good because you're emphasizing presence. You're emphasizing common ground, commonality, and I understand how you're going to handle it. And
And
it's
and
almost like,
these are no,
go
go ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna add that like these are this is not just like this is not political messaging, right? This is not the product of a comms strategy.
Yeah.
This is the product of like sitting in the room in community board four and community board, like sitting in the room with people in my community and just like hearing how they talk and think about these issues. Like this is it, I think people hear it and they assume that like, oh, it's like a tightrope to walk on, but it's not really. It's just like listening and playing back what I've heard members of my communities talk about for years.
How can we support Zohran's goal in Albany and in New York City to create 200,000 units of affordable housing in 10 years?
Yeah, so great question. I mean, my answer to that is the Social Housing Development Authority. I think that's a bill in the state legislature that would create an entity statewide to not just build new housing, but to take possession of housing that is falling apart in place and rehabilitate existing housing to create democratically controlled social housing that is permanently affordable to members of the community. Um,
Does
that to me is
Dilan,
the
what's
vision.
Dilan's vote on that? Is he supportive of that?
You will be shocked to learn that Delon is not a sponsor of the Social Housing Development
We can
Authority.
hang him on that.
Um,
Not literally, of course.
yeah, so I think that is like that's the long-term solution that I'm most excited to fight for. I think there are also shorter-term solutions that we need to be talking about when we talk about housing and specifically about fighting displacement and keeping people in their homes. One is the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act,
Yeah.
which would direct state funding to helping to organize tenants such that when their buildings are put on the market, the tenant union, the organized tenants have the opportunity to offer, they have the right of first refusal, right? They get to make an offer on their own building so that landlords selling buildings across, like, they don't stand to lose from this because they can still entertain other offers, but it gives tenants an opportunity to fight to stay in place. Another thing I think we don't talk about enough is a flip tax. Like part of what makes home values skyrocket in communities like East New York is that outside investors treat homes like an investment, right? They buy up houses,
Like a
they put in
commodity.
new
Yeah.
amenities. Exactly. They buy it, they flip it, they put in new amenities, and they double the price and put it back on the market. That does wild things to a housing market, and it quickly reduces the availability of affordable housing stock in the community.
Also, I think we've seen you in the community at East New York CLT, Community Land Trust meetings. I think you might have been around there a little bit. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
um,
noticed your name on the member list. When it comes time to vote, you pop up there.
right. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've been around myself. So, tell us about community land trusts and what you have experiences with East New York CLT as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah, yeah, very. I have a lot of love for these New York CLT. I met somebody at Brother Al Scott on CB5 put me on. We were just talking, staying late after one of the Housing and Land Use Committee meetings for Community Board 5. And he suggested I come out to a meeting and was just like immediately just taken by how authentic and like community driven and people centric that organizing is. Um, I think they do an incredible job. They're one of the, I think they were the first CLT in the city. Fact check this,
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I
yeah,
think they were the first CLT in the city to purchase a building, like to purchase and manage a building of tenants. They're currently in the process of converting those units to co-ops and creating homeownership opportunities for all of the tenants currently in that building. I think 25 units or something like that. Um,
yeah. It's like a couple blocks away from where I live, so I know exactly what you're talking
yeah,
about. Yeah.
it's,
And
I
there's
mean, it's
also a
something
backlash. I just got to stir the pot and tell you
trust
there's
me, I
also
know. Trust me,
there's
I
a
know.
backlash of weird. I can't judge it, but there's like there's some gossip online. You know, it's not utopia. It's not perfect, and there's some people that are
Yeah.
anti home ownership. I guess tenants that don't want change, and I have created I think an Instagram group or something. But
Yeah. I mean, like I think that's important. I think that's important, right? Because I think it is easy to talk about, oh, the Social Housing Development Authority, like permanently affordable, democratically run housing. That sounds great, but it's easy to forget that the democracy bit of that is quite challenging. And that's not there should be no interest or objective here to like steamroll folks with the housing we think they need, right? The point is to empower folks to dictate their own living conditions, to set their own living standard. And the community land trust is doing no form of steamrolling, right? That is like an example of social housing. That is a democratically run process. Those tenants are actively involved in the process. But I think like it is an important point that like this work is really hard and there are lessons to take from that. It's not as simple as just you build a building and suddenly you have social housing. Like it's about organizing people and about like encouraging and empowering and supporting folks to organize their neighbors, organize themselves, and like being with them every step of that process.
yeah, I know they're also working with my friend Tammy Green up the hill here,
Mhm.
who
Mhm.
is also an amazing entrepreneurial story, an amazing spiritual Christian woman who was homeless and then moved into an abandoned house, and maybe in the future we'll be working with the CLT to maybe convert the house to
Yeah, I
something good. Yeah,
hope so. Miss Green is a perfect example of like the community that you can unlock when you just provide housing security, right? Like Miss Green is a pillar of her community and should not have to fight and scrap to stay in place. Like
yeah,
this community needs Miss Green as much as Miss Green needs this community,
right,
and there should be no question about whether there's a place for her to stay here.
right. And the housing speculators have been targeting her house and
Yeah.
trying to wrestle
And
it
then
out of her hands. So,
Yeah. And then the nonsense of like the ways they go about that, right? I mean, it's just like it's malpractice. It's just real nasty business.
yeah.
Like
No,
the
yeah,
deed
I
theft
know exactly what you're
mechanisms
talking
that
about. Yeah.
like it just like when we talk about out of state investors, like sometimes it's as simple as they go on Zillow and they buy a cheap house and they make it expensive. And sometimes it's like really disgusting how that plays out. Like
Yeah.
some, it's infuriating. It's infuriating.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, is there anything that we didn't cover today that you would like to cover?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I gotta just say, like, we're in full swing over here, and we are really excited. We being this campaign, are really excited to get to work. So anybody who is reading, watching, listening to this, like, encourage you to go to cctfornyc.com and just like fill out the form to get involved. Because if you are out there and you are wanting more, or you are hungry for change, or you are inspired by the political movement that was Zohran's mayoral campaign
It
and
is
wondering where to put that
is
energy,
is ongoing as he actually takes power.
yeah. Like this is a place to put that energy. Like that work was very much the beginning, and like we have sent a message that we deserve a city that we can afford, but implementing that message is a whole nother challenge. And campaigns like this, the DSA slate all over the city, is what is going to implement that vision.
So once again, that website was CCT,
Hmm.
is in the four,
There you
numeral
go.
four,
There you go.
nyc.com. Great. Yeah, I think I saw it. It is a great website. And I'm hoping to have you at to do a house party here
Would love
in
to.
Highland Park. And I hope that we can open up that 167 member WhatsApp group for East New York for Zohran again and get access to that group. And that'll be a lot of fun. So
So
thank you,
you
CCT for victory. Thank you, buddy, for coming on the YouTube channel and talking to me for The Independent. And this is going to be a great story.
Thank you, Senator. Always great to chat with you.
Yeah, man. I'll see you next time.
Take care.
All right. Hey folks, just a quick message. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe. Why? Because we've got content nobody else has. I'm Sander Hicks. I'm an activist, spiritual, political, Quaker, Zen, into nonviolence, into creative construction and carpentry, into investigative journalism, reporting, and winning elections for the progressive Democratic left. So please like and please subscribe. Peace.